there any objection to that motion? Okay, hearing none, that's adopted. All right, so now, Tony, do you want to make any opening comments?
Yeah, just a brief comment. Thanks for having me at the meeting. Not my favorite thing sometimes. Meetings, I don't even find it. We had a staff meeting last night. I think the most important thing was not what I said, but the fact that we started the 7 o'clock meeting at 7:10 and ended at 8:20, so we weren't too far off. And I'm sure. How many people, sir? No, it's about 30 or 40.
You're hired.
You're hired, yeah, right.
I just relaying some of the thoughts that I had during the executive committee meeting, but not talking about any of the subject matter. I think you can expect to have more information from staff over the next meetings that you have. Make every effort to try to get you the information that you need in order to make the reasonable kind of oversight decisions that the Finance Committee needs to make, sort of the planning and understanding. And you will have staff participation, except in extraordinary situations. I mean, there could always be a chance not, but both myself and the business manager will be attending or trying to attend every single meeting, regardless of the time. I just had the pleasure of being at the Pacifica, I guess they call it the OC meeting, with all of the station managers and national staff just a few days ago, so I got to hear about how all of the stations are doing. A couple of them are doing very, very well, with WPFW moving, sort of rebounding from the financial difficulties they've had, in part because they had a large gala that only netted, I think, I've heard different numbers, $40,000 to $60,000 net. But they also had somebody who was so impressed that they had gotten over their troubles, that was a regular donor, that he was impressed with the gala, so he gave them $1 million. It's been over 4 or 5 years, and it's to help pay for their new facility. But he had been a large donor, but never anything like that before, and it was really the fact that he saw folks starting to come together that led to that. I don't doubt that we have somebody lurking in the shadows like that in a big city like this, and we'll be in a position to impress them sometime soon, I'm sure. I think KPF, I get confused whether I was hearing KPFA or KPFK, but one of them has a fairly large reserve fund going on right now. They're doing very well. The other two,
I think it's A.
Yes. The other two, in fact, they were able to donate some money to some national programming efforts. The other two there've been a couple of minor dips over the past couple of years in the other two too. So I think there's a couple of stations that have finished just slightly in the red over the past couple of years. There's been a couple of reasons for that outline. There was a sharp peak in accumulated listenership across the network somewhere around 2003 or 4, and I think it might have even peaked somewhere around 2005. But there's been a steady decline, with a little bit of flattening out in our case in the past year. And there's some discussion as to whether that represents a real change in radio listenership, or whether that represents a difference in people's relationship to the war. Meaning that the large peak took place, it seemed, as related to people's need for alternative information regarding the war, and that there may be some wariness going on right now. We'll need to look at that, but as you know, listenership is directly related to fund drives and so forth. Overall, the network seems to be in okay shape, although there's some concern across the network about BAI, and I think BAI has been the station that has contributed the most to the network over the long course of time, although we've had some difficulty since the big troubles, and so they're sort of really anxious for us to get back on our feet. So I'm aware of all the stuff that's going on. There's some pretty big hills for me to climb as general manager in terms of fundraising over the next 6 months, and I'll need a lot of help on that. But I think that we should be able to tighten things up here, that we should be able to meet our goals and start finding some outside resources outside of our listener fund drive to be able to bring in some additional money. I would think, and this is easy to say and hard to do, but we have about a $250,000 a month note to make, and I would think reasonable stability in an organization like this would be half of that, and what you really want is a full year of that. So in other words, we really need to build to where even with our operating increases that are necessary, that we ought to be able to put $500,000 in the bank in reserve that's not part of our operating, and that eventually we should be trying to build towards $1 million. Because just frankly, we're talking money here, but the truth of the matter is that our community really needs us. They need us now, and it's just my impression that they're going to need us more later, because I frankly think that this country is going to go through a different level of stress over the next 2, 3, 5 years with the $1 trillion debt, and this country's getting ready to go through some changes. When you look at the electoral politics, there's going to be a change one way or the other going on here. We're either going to go all the way down the road we've been going down, or we're going to make a change, and either way there's going to be a lot of stressors. That's when WBAI becomes really important, and we need to start figuring out a way to get over our internal discords and start focusing on what's really important, which is the health and vitality of this station, not only right now, but in the future. How are we going to put ourselves in a position to be there when the people who need us really need us? Will we look back and think that we've squandered the time that we've had when we could have done better and didn't realize what was coming next? Or will we be happy that we somehow had the foresight to look forward and see where we need to be as a group? I think that's where my job comes in, both in terms of trying to create the kind of attractive atmosphere around here that will attract people, that will attract money, that will cause people to have the ability to do the kind of programming they truly want to do. That's what my job is. So I'm going to approach that first from a managerial standpoint, to try to figure out how the systems and structures can be set up here to prevent people from having to argue over useless things so that they can argue over important things. And once having proceeded from being able to make people be in a position where they can truly be creative, then to start trying to have an effect more directly on our air. But the first thing, again, is I'm not going to go for the fun stuff. I'm going to go try to dig into all the things that you guys are talking about tonight, and try to figure out how we can get the best bang for the buck all the way across everything that we're doing. And I know when that happens, then we'll be producing a product as well that will allow us to attract more listeners and more support, and therefore more listeners and so on.
Okay,
that's my lecture for this evening.
Thanks very much. All right, so why don't we